So, I've been debating whether to even share this, but I need to get it off my chest. My wife, soon to be ex, I guess, and I have been married for 6 years. No kids, which now I'm seeing as a blessing in disguise. Let me start at the beginning. We live in a pretty busy city, and my wife, Jess, has always been the social butterfly. She works at this big marketing firm downtown, and because of the crazy traffic, she decided it was easier to just Uber to work rather than drive herself. It made sense at the time, so I didn't think much of it. She started taking these regular rides with the same driver. Apparently they hit it off, because she kept talking about how friendly he was and how it was nice to see a familiar face every day. I shrugged it off, honestly. She has a lot of guy friends, and I've never been the jealous type. The thing is, I didn't realize how friendly she was getting with this guy. It started off with little things. Jess would be home later than usual, claiming there was traffic, or she had to run errands. I didn't push it because, I trusted her. Big mistake. She started dressing up a little more before her rides, like putting in more effort for work than I've ever seen. Still, I was blind as hell and didn't think twice. Looking back, all the signs were there. It's almost embarrassing to admit now. The real red flag started when she began getting these random phone calls late at night. From work. I overheard her once, laughing softly and whispering, which is not something you do on a work call. But when I asked her about it, she brushed it off with some lame excuse like, "It's just Stacy being drunk again, nothing to worry about." I was an idiot and bought it. That's when things started getting weird. So, after the weird late-night calls and her getting home later than usual, I started noticing how defensive she got whenever I asked about her day. Normally, she'd go on and on about her annoying coworkers or what happened at the office. But now, whenever I casually asked how things were going, she'd get short with me. Just vague answers like, "It was fine," or "Nothing special." Then she'd quickly change the subject or go to bed early. I remember one particular day when I asked if she wanted to go out for dinner, just the two of us. She hesitated for a second and then said she had already eaten with coworkers after work. Except I knew for a fact she didn't mention any plans earlier. I didn't question it at the time, but in hindsight, I should have seen that as another red flag. Then, there was this one Uber ride she had. I was home, working from my office, and I got a notification on her phone, which she left on the table, that her Uber ride was ending. The trip was supposed to drop her off at our house, but the ride ended a good 20 minutes away from where we lived. Weird, right? I texted her, asking why she got dropped off somewhere else, and she replied that she had to pick up something from a store. Now, I'm not proud of this, but I started getting suspicious. That night, while she was asleep, I went through her Uber history. It's something I never thought I'd have to do, but something didn't feel right. That's when I saw it. She had a bunch of rides ending at weird locations. Places that weren't her office. Places that weren't anywhere she'd mentioned going. There was one address in particular that kept popping up, a spot in a part of town we never go to. I thought about confronting her then and there, but part of me wanted more proof. I was still in denial. So I did something else I'm not proud of. I started tracking her rides without her knowing. What I found out sent chills down my spine. I kept tracking her rides for the next week. It wasn't hard, she stuck to the same routine. She'd get picked up, head to work, but after that, her trips were all over the place. Sometimes she'd stop at that random address. Other times, it was just these strange little detours before she finally made her way home. Every time, she had some flimsy excuse for why she was late. Work dinner, traffic was horrible, had to run errands. I believed every one of those lies. One night, I decided to go to that address myself. I plugged it into Google Maps, and it was nothing more than some rundown parking lot near a cheap motel. A part of town that made my skin crawl just driving through. Why the hell would she be going there? I didn't say anything that night. I couldn't. I wanted to see if there was more to this before I confronted her. So I waited. The next day, she was all smiles, acting like everything was perfectly fine. She even suggested we have a date night later in the week, almost like she was trying to keep me distracted. 2 days later, she took another Uber ride and made the same stop at that sketchy address. I was shaking with anger at this point, but I kept my cool. I wanted to catch her red-handed. I waited until later that night, pretended to head to bed early, but I was wide awake. When I heard her sneaking out of the bedroom for what I assumed was another late-night work call, I followed her. She went into the bathroom, phone in hand, and whispered something I couldn't quite hear. But I did hear her mention the Uber driver by name, Ethan. She giggled and then quickly hung up, walking back to bed like nothing happened. My blood was boiling, but I played dumb. The next morning, I decided enough was enough. I needed proof. Real proof. So, I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I followed her the next day. I took the afternoon off work, pretended I had meetings, and then parked a block away from our house. I waited until her Uber pulled up. When she got in, I followed them. They didn't head to her office. Nope. They went straight to that damn parking lot. My heart raced as I parked a discreet distance away from the parking lot. I could see Jess's Uber pull in, and my gut twisted with dread. I waited, keeping an eye on the entrance, trying to breathe steadily, but the anxiety was overwhelming. I didn't know what I was going to do once I had confirmation, but I knew I had to see for myself. After a few minutes, I saw Jess step out of the car. She looked around, a mix of excitement and nervousness on her face. I could barely process the sight of her, my wife, looking like she was about to meet a lover. And then, out stepped Ethan, the Uber driver. He was wearing a casual hoodie, and they exchanged a brief, flirtatious smile that made my stomach turn. I wanted to scream, but I just sat there, frozen. They walked toward the back of the lot, out of sight. I followed cautiously, my heart pounding louder than my thoughts. I stayed far enough behind to avoid being seen, but close enough to hear anything if they spoke. I caught snippets of their conversation. They were laughing, and it was sickeningly intimate. "I miss you," Jess said, her voice dripping with that sickly sweet tone I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. "Can't believe we get to have some time together," Ethan replied, and my fists clenched. I wanted to tear into them, but I needed to see what happened next. Then, they stopped near a secluded spot behind a rusty old dumpster, the kind of place where you never expect to see someone's life unraveling. I watched, my heart in my throat, as they leaned in closer. Ethan whispered something in her ear that made her giggle like a schoolgirl. It was infuriating. Before I knew it, they were kissing. I felt like I was about to be sick. It started as a peck, then deepened into something far more passionate. My mind raced with thoughts of betrayal, all the lies I had believed. It was surreal, like watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. And then, they moved into the back seat of Ethan's car. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront them? Should I call the cops for public indecency? Instead, I was just a silent witness to my wife committing the ultimate betrayal. Moments later, they were lost in their own world. I couldn't hear anything, but the sight of them tangled up together in that cramped space was enough. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak wash over me. All the memories of our life together, the love we once had, were shattering into a million pieces right in front of me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to leave before I did something I'd regret. I got back in my car, my mind racing, plotting my next move. I knew I had to confront her, but how? The idea of a calm discussion felt impossible. It was clear I needed to end this once and for all. As I drove home, I made a decision. I would file for divorce. The moment she walked through that door, everything would change. I got home, my mind a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal. I paced around the living room, waiting for Jess to come back, trying to gather my thoughts. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew I needed to be strategic. I couldn't let her see how much I knew. I needed her to think everything was normal until I had my evidence lined up. When Jess finally walked through the door, she was all smiles, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Hey babe! You won't believe the crazy day I had at work, she chirped, tossing her purse on the couch. I forced a smile, feeling like a complete fraud. Really? Tell me about it, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She went on about some marketing campaign, her eyes sparkling with excitement, but all I could think about was what I had just witnessed. I nodded along, pretending to be interested, while inside I was screaming. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to make a move. Hey, you know what? I was thinking we should do something special this weekend, I suggested casually. How about dinner at that new restaurant downtown? She hesitated for just a moment before her smile returned. Sure, that sounds great. I'd love to. The enthusiasm in her voice felt forced, but I didn't push it. I needed to keep things light until I was ready to drop the bombshell. The next few days passed in a blur. Jess continued her routine, and I watched her closely. I was still gathering evidence, trying to find a way to make this all work in my favor. I began reaching out to some friends, letting them know what was going on, seeking advice, trying to find the strength to follow through with my plan. Friday rolled around, and I made sure to prepare myself. I had printed out the Uber receipts, saved the photos from my phone, and written down every detail I could recall. When Jess came home that night, she was dressed to the nines, clearly excited for our dinner. Ready for a night out? She asked, practically glowing. Absolutely, I replied, my heart racing as I knew what was coming. We went out, and I tried to enjoy the night, but every laugh felt like a dagger. As we sat down for dinner, I knew I had to confront her then and there. Halfway through our meal, I took a deep breath and decided it was time to shatter the illusion. Jess, I've noticed something strange lately, I began, watching her expression shift from excitement to uncertainty. I know you've been seeing someone else. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might actually choke on her wine. What are you talking about? She stammered, her voice shaky. The denial was already seeping in, and I was ready for it. I saw you with Ethan, your Uber driver. I know everything, I said, keeping my voice steady, but the fire in my chest was rising. You can't lie your way out of this. I followed you. I saw you kissing him. Jess's reaction was explosive. You followed me? That's insane. How dare you invade my privacy? Her eyes flashed with rage, but I wasn't backing down. Invade your privacy? What about the lies you've been telling me for weeks? I shot back, feeling the heat of anger coursing through me. You think this is just going to disappear? I'm done with the deception. She tried to spin a story, something about how it was just a misunderstanding, but her excuses were so pathetic they only made me angrier. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized I wasn't buying any of it. Suddenly, she slammed her hand on the table. You're being ridiculous. You're twisting everything, she yelled, drawing attention from nearby tables. The stares didn't faze me. I was done caring about appearances. I'm not twisting anything. You're the one who's been living a lie. And guess what? I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. The finality of those words hung in the air, and I could see the realization wash over her. Jess's face shifted from anger to hysteria. You can't be serious. We can fix this. You're just overreacting, she pleaded, her voice rising to a near shout. Fix this? You think there's any fixing what you've done? I asked, my voice cold. I was done. I felt empowered, finally ready to reclaim my life. But Jess wasn't ready to let go. The chaos had only just begun. The scene at the restaurant turned into a full-blown spectacle. Jess was escalating, her emotions spilling over in front of all these strangers. I could see the hurt and rage in her eyes, but I didn't care. I had finally confronted the monster of betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. Do you really think you can just walk away from everything we built? She shouted, her voice cracking. What about our life together? You're throwing it all away. I felt a twinge of guilt for the onlookers who were now uncomfortably staring at us, but I quickly squashed it. You threw it all away the moment you chose to cheat on me, Jess. This isn't about us anymore, It's about your choices. Her face twisted in frustration, and she tried to regain some composure, but it was too late. The tears started flowing as she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Please, just give me another chance. I can fix this. We can fix this together. I didn't mean to fall for him. At that moment, the whole world around us faded away. I felt a mixture of sadness and anger boiling inside me. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see how delusional she sounded. But I held my ground. You didn't just fall for him, you actively pursued him. You chose to betray me repeatedly, and now you want me to believe you can change? It doesn't work like that. She was becoming hysterical now, her voice rising again. You're being unreasonable. You don't know what it's like to feel trapped. The waiter came over, clearly uncomfortable, and asked if we needed anything. I just shook my head, signaling that we were fine. I can't keep doing this, I said firmly. This isn't a negotiation. I'm filing for divorce, and I want you out of the house by the end of the week. She looked at me as if I had just slapped her. You're serious? You'll throw away everything? All the memories? I could feel my own resolve wavering at her words, but I quickly steeled myself. Memories? What good are they when they're built on lies? You've erased any good between us with your actions. She grabbed my hand, desperation etched all over her face. Don't do this. Let's talk about it at home. Please, let's not ruin everything right now. I pulled my hand away, feeling her grip slip. You think talking will magically fix this? I'm done listening to your lies. She tried to argue more, but I could see that I had hit a nerve. The fight in her was fading, replaced by a mix of fear and regret. What will I do? She whispered, her voice cracking again. I can't just lose you. Her tears felt like a hollow echo of the love we once had. You already lost me the moment you decided to betray my trust. I'm done being your emotional safety net while you run around with someone else. I stood up, feeling the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. I'm leaving. This is over. I turned and walked out, leaving her behind, the echoes of her cries fading as I stepped onto the street. As I drove home, I felt a strange mix of liberation and sadness. I was finally free from the deceit, but my heart was heavy with the reality of the situation. It was going to be a long road ahead, but I was ready to start anew, no matter how daunting it felt. But little did I know, Jess wasn't going to let this end so easily. The drama was far from over. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the fallout of my confrontation with Jess. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face twisted in desperation, and it made my stomach churn. I felt both relieved and heartbroken, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into an unknown future. Jess didn't take my decision to file for divorce lightly. She bombarded me with texts and calls, pleading for a chance to talk things through. I ignored most of them, knowing that any conversation would only devolve into her trying to manipulate me back into her arms. But part of me felt guilty for leaving her so emotionally raw. On the third day after our explosive dinner, I came home to find a note slipped under the door. It was from Jess, written in her familiar scrawl but filled with desperation. Please, can we talk? I need you to hear me out. I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. I'm sorry. I crumpled the note in my fist, anger bubbling up again. Fix this? I muttered to myself. You can't fix something that's broken beyond repair. I wanted to throw it away and forget about it, but something made me hold on to it. I tucked it into my pocket, unsure of what I wanted to do with it. Later that night, I decided to meet with a friend for drinks. We went to a bar nearby, and as I recounted the events of the past week, I could feel the weight slowly lifting. My friend Mike listened intently, offering support and advice as I vented about Jess and Ethan. Dude, you did the right thing, he said. You can't live with someone who's betraying you. You deserve better. As we talked, I realized I was slowly regaining my sense of self. I hadn't felt this light in weeks, maybe months. But just as I was starting to feel hopeful about moving on, my phone buzzed with a new text. It was Jess again. "I'm outside. Please let me in," it read. My heart sank. I hadn't expected her to show up. I glanced at Mike, who raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You gonna let her in?" he asked. I hesitated. "I don't know. I'm not ready for this." "Dude, you can't let her back in unless you're prepared to hear whatever she has to say. It could just be more of the same." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anxiety and anger. "I'll see what she wants, but I won't be swayed." I walked to the door, my heart racing. I opened it, and there she stood, looking disheveled and desperate. "Can we talk? Please?" she pleaded, her voice trembling. I stepped aside, unsure if this was a good idea, but I didn't have the heart to slam the door in her face. "Fine. But this is it, Jess. No more lies," I warned as she stepped inside. The tension in the air was palpable as we sat down in the living room. She looked at me, her eyes glistening with tears, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the love I once had for her. But it was quickly overshadowed by the reality of what she had done. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she started, her voice shaky. "I know I messed up. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I felt lost. I thought you didn't care anymore." That familiar excuse felt like a knife twisting deeper. "So, cheating was the answer?" I shot back. "You thought throwing away our marriage would help?" She flinched at my words but pressed on. "I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. But I want to change. I'll do anything to prove it. I'll cut Ethan out of my life. Just give me one more chance." I wanted to scream. "You think you can just erase him from your life and everything will be fine? It doesn't work like that. You can't expect me to just forget this." Jess's face crumbled, and the desperation in her eyes felt genuine. "Please," she whispered. "I don't want to lose you." I sat back, my mind racing. Did I really want to open this door again? I knew what I should say, but part of me was still clinging to the memories of our life together. But I also knew I had to be strong. "Jess, I'm filing for divorce. I've made my decision." The finality of those words hung heavily in the air, and I watched as her face fell, the reality of my decision sinking in. What happened next would change everything. The moment I uttered those words, a profound silence enveloped the room. Jess's expression shifted from desperation to disbelief, and I could see the weight of my decision crashing down on her. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I am," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and heartache. "I can't live like this. I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me or our marriage." Her eyes glistened with tears, and she started to tremble. "Please don't do this. We can work through it. We've built so much together, our home, our life. I can change, I swear." The raw emotion in her voice tugged at something deep inside me, but I shook my head, forcing myself to stay firm. "Change doesn't happen overnight, Jess. And trust is not something you can just rebuild with a few promises." I was trying to sound resolute, but inside, I was battling a storm of conflicting emotions. I hated seeing her like this, but I knew I had to stand my ground. "Just let me prove it to you. Give me a chance to show you I can be the person you thought I was," she cried, and for a moment I could see the woman I fell in love with behind the tears. But the reality of her betrayal loomed larger. "Prove it? You've already shown me who you really are. You think I can just overlook that?" "I can't, Jess." My voice was steady, but the hurt in my heart was palpable. She took a deep breath, visibly trying to regain some control. "What if I got therapy? What if I cut Ethan out of my life for good? Would that be enough?" Her desperation was evident, and I could see her mind racing, grasping at anything to save what we had. I hesitated. The thought of her going through therapy was tempting, but the reality of our situation still hung heavy. "It's not just about Ethan, Jess. It's about everything that's led us here. The lies, the broken trust. It's too much." Suddenly she stood up, her emotions spilling over again. "You don't understand. I felt alone. You were always busy with work, and I didn't know how to reach you." The accusation stung, but I knew she was trying to deflect. "You chose to cheat instead of communicating. You didn't even try," I shot back, my voice rising as frustration boiled over. "This isn't about me. You made this choice, and now you have to face the consequences." She collapsed back onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I messed up. I messed everything up," she sobbed. It was heartbreaking to watch, but I reminded myself that I wasn't responsible for her choices. "I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice softer now but still firm. "I've made my decision. I'm moving forward with the divorce." She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "I can't lose you. I'll do anything." Her voice was a fragile whisper, but I could hear the desperation behind it. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me, but I knew I had to stick to my guns. "You already lost me when you decided to betray my trust. I deserve better than this." She fell silent, the fight seemingly leaving her. I stood up, feeling a rush of empowerment mixed with sorrow. "I'm going to start the paperwork. You should take some time to think about everything." As I turned to leave, I heard her voice, small and broken. "What if you regret this?" I paused, looking back at her. "I won't. I need to take care of myself now." And with that, I walked out, closing the door behind me, leaving Jess to face the reality of her actions. But as I stepped outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger storm. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and emotions. I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by divorce papers and legal documents, feeling strangely detached from it all. I had never imagined I'd be in this position, but here I was, trying to regain control of my life. I couldn't stop thinking about Jess. She'd sent me a few more texts, asking to talk and pleading for another chance. Each message was a reminder of the woman I once loved, but also a stark reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our marriage. I felt a tug of sympathy for her, but I knew I had to stay strong. One evening, I decided to visit Mike again. He had been an invaluable support during this chaotic time, and I needed a distraction. Over a couple of beers, I filled him in on the latest developments. "I'm starting the paperwork, but it feels so surreal," I admitted, swirling my drink. "Part of me wonders if I'm doing the right thing." "Dude, you are. You can't let her manipulate you into feeling guilty. You have to think about yourself," Mike reassured me. "You deserve happiness, too." We talked about everything, my hopes for the future, what I wanted to do next. As we left the bar, I felt a sense of relief. I was starting to reclaim my life, step by step. But the moment I got home, that sense of peace shattered. I opened my door to find Jess sitting on the couch, her eyes puffy and red. She looked like a ghost of the woman I had once known. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice icy. I didn't expect to see her again so soon, especially unannounced. "I needed to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "I can't keep living like this. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how much I messed up." I crossed my arms, bracing myself. "And what's changed since our last conversation? Are you just going to say what you think I want to hear?" She looked down, guilt washing over her features. "No. I mean, yes, I've messed up. But I'm serious this time. I want to change. I've started looking for a therapist. I want to work on myself, on us." "Therapy? One session and you think it's enough to fix everything?" I scoffed. "This isn't just about you needing help. You broke my trust, Jess." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know it's not going to be easy. But I can't lose you. I'm willing to fight for this." I felt torn. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to imagine a world where we could fix everything, but another part screamed that it was too late. "You can't just throw around promises and expect everything to be okay," I said firmly. "It's going to take more than that." "Then what do I have to do? Tell me," she pleaded, her desperation palpable. I can't let you go without at least trying. I paused, considering her words. I need time to think, Jess. Time to figure out what I want. You need to understand that I can't just forgive and forget. It's not that simple. She nodded, visibly shaken. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't make a decision yet. Please. The anguish in her voice tugged at my heart, but I knew I couldn't let emotion sway me. I'll think about it, I said finally, though I was already leaning toward walking away for good. Jess wiped her tears, standing up to face me. Thank you for hearing me out. I just hope you really think about everything. I'll give you space. As she turned to leave, I felt a mix of sadness and anger. I wanted to scream that it was too late, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I closed the door behind her, locking myself back into my thoughts. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized I was at a crossroads. I had the power to decide my future, but the fear of what that meant was overwhelming. I was free, but the burden of moving on felt heavier than ever. Little did I know, Jess wasn't finished fighting for us just yet. The next round was coming, and it would be one I never expected. The days rolled on, each one feeling longer than the last. I was caught in this emotional limbo, oscillating between anger and regret, and the weight of Jess's pleas echoed in my mind. Just when I thought I was starting to find my footing, the ground beneath me shifted again. One evening, as I was unwinding with a book, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jess. Can we meet? I have something important to discuss. My stomach dropped at the urgency in her message. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a nearby coffee shop. When I arrived, I found her sitting at a corner table, fidgeting with her hands. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her eyes puffy and red. Thanks for coming, she said, her voice strained. I know you're angry, but I really need you to hear me out. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. All right, what's this important thing you wanted to discuss? Jess looked down at her coffee, gathering her thoughts. I've been thinking about how I can prove to you that I'm serious about changing. I know I've hurt you, but I've also realized something else. I need to take responsibility for my actions. I narrowed my eyes, skeptical. What does that mean? I'm going to move out, she said, her voice trembling. I'll find a place to stay, and I'll cut all ties with Ethan. I want to show you that I can be independent and that I can handle my own issues. I don't want to pressure you into forgiving me, but I need you to know that I'm taking this seriously. Her words hit me like a freight train. I hadn't expected this kind of confession. You're moving out? I repeated, trying to process what she was saying. Yes. I think it's best for both of us, she replied, tears welling in her eyes. I want to work on myself, and I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I love you, and I can't lose you, but I also need to be better on my own. Part of me wanted to believe her sincerity, but another part of me felt the familiar twinge of doubt. And what makes you think this will actually work? I asked, my voice firm. You've broken my trust too many times. I know it won't be easy, she admitted. But I have to try. I can't just sit around hoping for things to magically get better. I'll start therapy right away and focus on myself, and I hope that time apart will give us both clarity. Her plan caught me off guard. I could see the determination in her eyes, but the fear of getting hurt again lingered. So, what's your timeline here? When do you expect me to just jump back in and act like everything's fine? Jess shook her head. I'm not asking you to do that. I just need you to know I'm serious about making a change. I won't contact you unless you want me to. I just hope you'll consider giving me another chance once I prove I can be better. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to cling to the hope that things could somehow be fixed, while another part warned me against the danger of falling back into old patterns. I don't know, Jess. I need time to think. I understand, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I just hope you'll see that I'm willing to put in the effort. As I left the coffee shop, my mind was racing. Jess was taking a step I hadn't anticipated, and it left me feeling both hopeful and terrified. Could this be the beginning of her redemption, or was it just another ploy to pull me back into her orbit? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversation, weighing the pros and cons of her proposal. In the end, I knew I had to prioritize my own healing, but the question remained, was I ready to completely let her go? As I lay awake, contemplating my next move, I realized that Jess's departure was only the beginning of a complicated journey ahead. What she didn't know was that her next decision would unleash a series of events none of us could have predicted. The following week was a whirlwind of mixed emotions. Jess moved out, and her absence hung over the apartment like a ghost. I'd expected relief, but instead, I felt an unsettling emptiness. I filled my days with work, distractions, and attempts at normalcy, but every corner of the apartment reminded me of her. One night, after another long day, I decided to hit the gym to blow off some steam. As I walked in, I bumped into Ethan, the very man who had torn my world apart. He was there, leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone. My heart raced, and anger flared up as I felt the urge to confront him. But I didn't want to stoop to that level. Instead, I averted my gaze and tried to walk past, but he caught sight of me. "Hey, man! Long time no see," he said, forcing a smile that felt like a slap in the face. "Yeah, well, things have changed," I replied curtly, trying to brush past him. "Listen, I know this must be awkward, but I really didn't mean to come between you two," he said, his tone oddly casual. "Jess and it was just a thing. I didn't know you guys were having issues." "Right," I snapped, irritation bubbling up. "You think that excuses what you did? You had no respect for our marriage." His expression shifted, the facade cracking slightly. "Look, I'm sorry for what happened. I thought she was unhappy with you. She talked about feeling alone, and I don't. Just don't," I interrupted. "You don't get to play the victim here. You knew she was married." Ethan raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Okay, I get it. I messed up. But Jess and I are done now. She made it clear she wants to work things out with you." I scoffed. "You think I care what she wants? You're delusional if you think I'm just going to forgive and forget because you say so." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't wait for his excuses. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. The encounter had stirred up so much anger and hurt, and I didn't need this. When I got home, I felt a strange mix of empowerment and turmoil. I realized I was done letting either of them dictate my emotions. I had to focus on myself and my own healing. I needed to reclaim my life completely. A few days later, I received a text from Jess, asking if we could meet to talk about her progress. My initial reaction was to say no, but something inside me wanted to hear her out. I agreed to meet her at a park, hoping the fresh air might ease the tension between us. When I arrived, Jess was sitting on a bench, visibly nervous. She looked different, more put together, maybe a bit lighter. "Hey," she said, standing up as I approached. "Thanks for meeting me." "Sure," I replied, crossing my arms. "What's going on?" "I've started therapy," she said, her voice earnest. "I want to show you I'm serious about changing. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching, and I realize how selfish I've been." I nodded, trying to gauge her sincerity. "What does that mean for us?" "I know I can't just ask for forgiveness. But I'm committed to doing the work. I've also cut all contact with Ethan. It's over for good," she said, meeting my gaze with determination. "Okay," I said slowly. "But words are easy. Actions matter. You need to prove that you're committed to change." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm not expecting you to forgive me right away. But I hope you can see that I'm genuinely trying." Her honesty struck a chord, but I still felt the weight of distrust. "This isn't going to be a quick fix, Jess. You've hurt me deeply, and it's going to take time for me to process everything." "I get that," she said, looking down. "I just want you to know I'm ready to fight for us." We talked for a while, and as I listened, a small part of me began to hope again. But another part warned me that hope could be dangerous. I didn't want to fall back into old patterns of denial. When we parted, I felt conflicted. I could see Jess's determination, but could it truly lead to change? The path ahead was uncertain, and I knew that I had to guard my heart carefully. What I didn't realize was that Jess's journey would take an unexpected turn, one that would force me to confront the reality of her decisions, and challenge everything I thought I knew about our relationship. The following days were a delicate balancing act. Jess seemed genuinely committed to her therapy and working on herself, but I struggled with whether I could trust her. I found myself watching her every move, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just as I was beginning to adapt to this new, tentative dynamic, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before picking it up. "Hello? Is this your name?" a woman's voice asked, sounding both urgent and familiar. "Yes, who is this?" I replied, my heart racing. "This is Jenna, a friend of Jess's. I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet?" My mind raced. Jenna? I vaguely remembered Jess mentioning a friend but hadn't thought much of it. "What's this about?" "It's about Jess. I think you need to know what's really going on." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Fine. Where do you want to meet?" We arranged to meet at a nearby cafe, and as I drove there, my heart pounded. What could she possibly have to tell me? When I arrived, Jenna was already seated, her expression serious. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice low. "I don't want to stir up trouble, but I feel like you deserve to know the truth." I sat down, anxiety coursing through me. "What's going on?" "Jess and I have been friends for years. When she started dating you, I saw a side of her I hadn't seen before. But after the affair with Ethan, I noticed something was off. She's been struggling, and I don't think she's being entirely honest with you." I felt my pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" Jenna leaned in closer. "She told me she was cutting ties with Ethan, but I saw them together a few days ago. They were at a bar, laughing and acting like everything was fine. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I thought you deserved to know." My world tilted on its axis. "Are you serious? You saw them together?" "Yes," she replied, her eyes filled with sincerity. "I didn't want to believe it either, but I had to tell you. You can't let her manipulate you again. I know she says she's changed, but why didn't you tell me sooner?" I interrupted, frustration bubbling over. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but when I saw them together, I couldn't stay silent. "I care about her, but I also care about you. You deserve better than this." I sat back, feeling a mixture of anger and betrayal swell within me. "So what do I do now?" "Confront her. Don't let her play games with your heart again. You deserve the truth," Jenna said, her tone firm. I left the cafe feeling like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I couldn't believe Jess would do this after everything we'd been through. My mind raced with thoughts of confrontation, but I knew I had to approach this carefully. That evening, I called Jess and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I could see a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but I could sense the tension. "Sit down," I said, my voice steady but firm. She took a seat, her expression shifting as she sensed the gravity of the moment. "What's wrong?" "I just spoke with Jenna," I said, watching her reaction closely. Her face went pale. "Jenna? Why were you talking to her?" "Because she told me something that's hard to swallow," I continued, keeping my tone even. "She saw you with Ethan a few days ago." Jess's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, that can't be true. Are you serious right now?" I shot back, anger rising. "She said you were at a bar together, laughing and acting like nothing happened. Why should I believe you if you can't even be honest with me?" "No, please, you have to believe me. I haven't seen him since I moved out." "She's lying," Jess pleaded, her voice trembling. "Jenna has no reason to lie," I countered, feeling my resolve harden. "What's the truth here, Jess? Are you still seeing him?" She looked cornered, panic evident in her expression. "I swear I'm not. I've been focusing on myself, and I'm serious about us." "I don't know why she would say that." Because she saw you. You can't keep hiding behind excuses. You need to come clean right now, or this is over. For a moment, silence enveloped us, heavy and thick. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the desperation written all over her face. Finally, she broke down. I was tempted to reach out to him. I'm so confused. But I didn't actually see him. Her admission sent a chill down my spine. So you're saying you almost went back to him? Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded. I didn't act on it. I swear I didn't. I want to fix things with you. The desperation in her eyes clashed with my overwhelming hurt. I felt the ground beneath me begin to shake again. The trust we were building had just crumbled in an instant. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I need time to think about this, Jess. I can't just ignore what I've heard. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Don't. I need space right now. As she left, I felt the weight of betrayal settle heavily in my chest. I had tried to believe in her, but now everything felt like a lie. The fragile hope I had been clinging to had shattered, leaving me in a whirlwind of confusion and pain. What I didn't realize was that this confrontation was only the tip of the iceberg. The fallout from this moment would lead to an unexpected revelation that would change everything yet again. After Jess left, I felt like a balloon that had just been popped. The emotional high from our earlier discussions had deflated into a deep sense of betrayal and confusion. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying every moment, every word. The memories of happier times clashed violently with the raw reality of our situation. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I decided to reach out to Mike, needing a sounding board and a friend who wouldn't sugarcoat things. I called him, and he was at my door within the hour. Hey man, he said as he walked in, concern etched on his face. You look rough. Yeah, well, I had a rough night, I replied, rubbing my temples. I talked to Jess. She swore she was done with Ethan, but then I found out she lied. Jenna saw them together. I feel completely blindsided. Mike's expression shifted to one of anger. That's messed up, man. You deserve better than this. Are you seriously considering giving her another chance? I don't know, I admitted, feeling the weight of my indecision. Part of me wants to believe she can change, but the other part says I'm just setting myself up for more heartbreak. We talked for hours, diving deep into my feelings of betrayal, anger, and lingering affection for Jess. Mike reminded me that I needed to prioritize my own well-being. You can't let her dictate how you feel. You need to make a decision based on what's best for you, he said. As the sun set, I felt slightly more grounded, but still overwhelmed by the choices ahead. Later that night, I received a message from Jess. Can we please talk? I need to explain everything. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to respond, but another part felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I needed space, but I also needed closure. Instead of replying, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The cool night air felt refreshing against my skin, but my mind was still racing. I found myself near the bar where Jenna had said she saw Jess and Ethan. The thought of walking in sent a wave of nausea through me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed answers. I pushed the door open, the sounds of laughter and music filling my ears. I scanned the room, half expecting to see them together, but the bar was packed, and I didn't spot either of them. I ordered a drink, my heart pounding as I took a seat in the back corner, hoping to remain unnoticed. As I sipped my drink, I noticed a group of people at the bar, their laughter ringing out. Then, to my shock, I spotted Jess across the room, talking animatedly with a guy who looked suspiciously like Ethan. My stomach dropped. I felt the world around me spin. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was this a cruel twist of fate? In that moment, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal flood my veins. I couldn't just sit there and watch. I needed to confront her, to demand the truth. I stood up, my heart racing, and made my way toward them. As I approached, Jess caught sight of me, her expression shifting from joy to horror in an instant. "Oh my God!" she whispered, her eyes wide. What the hell is going on? I snapped, my voice rising above the chatter. The room seemed to go quiet as everyone turned to stare. Wait, it's not what it looks like, Jess stammered, panic flashing across her face. Then what is it? I challenged, my anger bubbling to the surface. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're right back with him. Ethan smirked, clearly enjoying the drama unfolding. Hey man, chill. Jess and I were just catching up. No big deal. No big deal? You're the reason my marriage is in shambles. I shot back, my voice laced with fury. Jess stepped between us, desperation in her eyes. Please, just let me explain. It was supposed to be a friendly chat. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. But you're still talking to him. After everything, I yelled, feeling my heart race. You promised you were done. You've been lying to me this whole time. I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you, she cried, tears streaming down her face. I thought I could handle it. I thought we could still be friends. Friends? I interrupted, incredulous. You think this is okay? After everything we've been through? Ethan leaned back, clearly entertained by the chaos. This is getting old, man. Maybe you should just let her go. In that moment, everything clicked. Jess wasn't just confused, she was playing games, and I was the one getting hurt in the process. I turned to Jess, my voice steady but filled with disappointment. I can't do this anymore. This is who you are, and I deserve better. Her eyes widened in shock, and I felt a twinge of sorrow for the person I once loved. But the betrayal was too deep. I'm done, I said firmly, walking away from the chaos behind me. I could feel Jess's gaze on my back, but I didn't turn around. I needed to leave this mess behind for good. That night marked a turning point. I realized that my journey toward healing was just beginning, and I had to prioritize my own well-being. Little did I know, Jess's next move would only complicate matters further, leading to an unexpected revelation that would change everything once again. After that explosive confrontation at the bar, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity. I had finally seen Jess for who she truly was, and I knew I couldn't let myself get pulled back into her web of lies. Yet, the aftermath was anything but peaceful. The next day, I woke up determined to move forward. I started thinking about my own future. Maybe I'd focus on my work, pick up a new hobby, or even take that trip I'd been putting off for years. But as the hours passed, anxiety crept in, gnawing at my resolve. Just when I thought I was starting to find my footing, I received an unexpected call from Mike. Hey man, you need to see this, he said, urgency lacing his voice. What is it? I asked, my heart racing. I was out running errands, and I saw Jess and Ethan together. They were at the park, holding hands, he said, his tone grave. A surge of anger and betrayal swept over me again. Are you serious? After everything? She just doesn't stop, does she? I thought you should know. You deserve to hear it from someone who cares, he replied. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, I said, feeling a mix of gratitude and rage. But I can't let this ruin my day. I'm done with her games. As I hung up, I realized I was right. I was done. I spent the rest of the day focusing on myself, hitting the gym hard and letting off steam. But as evening fell, I felt restless. I couldn't shake the urge to confront Jess one last time, to demand a real explanation. That night I texted her. We need to talk. Now, she replied almost instantly. Please, can we do this later? I'm busy. Busy with Ethan? I shot back, frustration boiling over. Just come over. I promise I'll explain, she responded, the urgency evident in her words. When I arrived at her new apartment, I felt a mix of trepidation and determination. She opened the door, her face pale and drawn. Hey, she said, looking more anxious than I'd ever seen her. Cut the small talk, I said, stepping inside. I saw you with Ethan. How can you keep doing this? Her eyes widened in shock. You don't understand. Then explain it to me, I interrupted. Why do you keep putting me through this? Why can't you just be honest? I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling. It's complicated. Ethan reached out to me, and I was confused. I thought I could just be friends. Friends? I echoed, incredulous. After everything you've done, you think that's acceptable? I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to figure things out, she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Didn't mean for what to happen? I snapped. You're playing with my heart while keeping him in your life? What do you want from me? I don't know. I thought if I could fix myself first, then maybe we could. She started, but I cut her off. Fix yourself? You're not ready for a relationship, Jess. Not with me, and definitely not with him, I said, feeling the anger boil over again. You've hurt me too many times to count. I know, she shouted back, her voice raw with emotion. I'm just asking for a chance to make it right. I shook my head, realizing that any hope I had left was slipping away. You don't get to dictate the terms anymore. You've shown me who you really are, and I deserve better than this. Please don't do this, she begged, stepping closer. I love you. I just need time to sort everything out. I felt a pang of sadness at her words, but I couldn't let myself be swayed. Love isn't about lies and betrayal. You've broken my trust too many times. In that moment, I made my decision. I'm filing for divorce, Jess. I can't keep doing this. It's over. Her face fell, shock and despair etched into her features. You're serious? Dead serious, I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders as I spoke the words. I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me. I thought we could work things out. I thought you'd give me another chance, she cried, desperation pouring from her. Not anymore, I said, my voice firm. I'm done. It's time for me to move on. As I walked out of her apartment, I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. I had finally taken control of my life, but the pain of what we'd lost still stung. Little did I know, Jess wasn't finished with her games. The next move she would make would send shockwaves through my life once again, forcing me to confront everything I thought I had left behind. In the days following my decision to file for divorce, I felt an odd sense of freedom mixed with lingering sadness. I was determined to focus on myself, to reclaim my life. I threw myself into work and began making plans for a trip I had been dreaming about for years, a way to truly start fresh. But just as I was beginning to find my footing, Jess struck again. I received an unexpected message from her one evening. We need to talk. I have something important to tell you. A wave of dread washed over me. I didn't want to engage anymore, but part of me was curious. What could she possibly want now? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. When I arrived at a small cafe, I noticed Jess sitting at a table, her demeanor significantly different from our last encounter. She looked anxious but resolute. As I sat down, I braced myself for another round of emotional turmoil. Thank you for coming, she began, her voice shaky. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to hear me out. Make it quick, I replied, trying to keep my distance. I've been seeing a therapist, and I realized something important, she said, her eyes pleading. I made a huge mistake thinking I could just keep Ethan in my life as a friend. I didn't want to lose you, but I was scared of facing my own problems. I felt my heart harden at her words. So what? You're asking for another chance? I've already made my decision, Jess. No, that's not it, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. I'm not asking for that. I just want you to know that I've broken off all contact with him for good. I don't want him in my life anymore. I raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over my face. How do I know this isn't another lie? Because I found out something that changed everything, she continued, her voice trembling. Ethan's not who you think he is. He's been lying to me the whole time. He has a girlfriend he never mentioned, and he's been stringing me along. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean? I saw them together the other day. I confronted him, and he admitted it. He was just using me to fill a void in his life. He didn't care about me at all," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I feel so foolish." In that moment, I realized how deep her vulnerability ran. "So you were just a backup plan for him? And you didn't think to tell me any of this sooner?" "I was ashamed," she cried. "I was trying to figure things out and didn't want to look weak. But now I see how wrong I was." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her pain. "So, what do you want from me now?" "I just want you to understand that I'm truly sorry. I've been doing the work to be better, and I want to be honest with you. I need to show you that I can change," she said, her voice earnest. I studied her, seeing a glimmer of the person I once loved, but the scars of betrayal ran too deep. "Jess, it's not enough. I can't rebuild what we had, especially not with all the chaos you've brought into my life. But I need you to know that I've realized my mistakes. I've lost you, and it hurts more than I can say," she admitted, her voice breaking. I felt a pang of regret for the person she used to be, but I had to remind myself of the damage that had been done. "I can't do this anymore. It's time for both of us to move on." As I stood up to leave, Jess reached for my hand, her touch igniting memories of what we once had. "Please, just give me some time. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm serious about changing." I hesitated for a moment, then pulled my hand away gently. "I wish you well, Jess. But I can't be part of your journey anymore." With that, I walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I left the cafe, I felt the weight of my decision settle in. I had made the right choice, but it didn't make it any easier. In the days that followed, I focused on moving forward. I booked that trip I had been dreaming about, planning to take the time to heal and rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I immersed myself in work, friends, and new experiences, embracing the possibilities ahead. Jess's chapter in my life had closed, but it had taught me valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and resilience. I realized that healing was a journey, not a destination, and I was ready to embrace it fully. As I boarded the plane, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The future was uncertain, but I knew it was mine to shape. I had finally broken free from the pain, ready to explore a new life, one filled with possibilities, free from the shadows of betrayal. And as I took my seat, I knew one thing for sure: I was ready for a fresh start, one that was just for me.